Hey guys, welcome to week 7 of memory. This is our final video for what you're going to be assessed on in the SAC in week 8 on the Thursday. So we're nearly there. Stick with me. So we're looking at the biology of memory. What you'll notice is that if you open up chapter 9, we're only going to learn the second half of chapter 9. The first half of chapter 9 is talking about where the memories are stored in the brain. And some really physical processes and the structure of neurons. We're going to learn that information when we start learning about the brain. I feel like it would make a lot more sense then. So the only information that you're going to be assessed on in this SAC is the second half of chapter 9, which is from pages 288 to 301. So now would be a really great time to pause and have a read over those pages, and I'll see you in the next slide. Okay, for those of you that didn't pause, stop, read, learn. We know that we need this time for the actual learning to happen. It's really important that you learn those pages that I said or read those pages. It will help you understand this PowerPoint a lot more. If you haven't read it now, make sure you read it afterwards, but don't avoid the reading part. So basically we're going to start off with the consolidation theory. And this is the idea that when memories are stored in long-term memory, so they've gone from short-term memory to long-term memory, or from working memory to long-term memory, depending on whose model you're looking at, that some sort of physical change takes place for these memories to be stored. So it basically says that this physical process takes place, and this happens in the hippocampus, which is a structure in the brain. You don't need to know where that structure is yet, but just know the name, the hippocampus. If you want to have a look, you can have a look in your book and see where that is, but we will learn that when we learn about the brain. So this physical process happens in hippocampus, and basically it involves the idea that memories take a period of time to set. So our memories are like concrete. We can write a memory and it stays wet for a period of time. And if I was to write in concrete and it was wet, someone else could come up and change what I had written. They could rub over it, they could write something new, they could add a silly face to it. And the idea is that memories are much the same, that they can be changed or erased possibly during that setting period. But once they are finally set in long-term memory, they tend to be more permanent and harder to change. And when we retrieve memories, they would come back into short-term memory, and then we could change them there, but then that would then involve another setting period where those memories could be changed again. And a lot of this research has come from brain damage patients that have been knocked unconscious or had some sort of head trauma, and we've seen that memories have been erased, memories that had just happened leading up to the head trauma. So we know that memories are vulnerable during this consolidation period. However, it suggests that this only happens for declarative memories. So again, if we talk about the people that have had some sort of brain trauma, what you find is their procedural memories tend to stay intact regardless of the trauma. It is their declarative memories, so either the personal information or the general knowledge about the world, that tends to be affected if they sustain some sort of damage during this setting time. So let's have a look into it in a little bit more detail. So for a memory to be permanently stored, a few things have to happen. So something physical has to happen between the neurons. There's some sort of physical connection that's formed, physical and chemical connection. We will talk about that in depth when we talk about the brain. At the moment, you just need to know that there's something physical that happens between the neurons when memories are formed. No disruption must take place during this time. So for a memory to be formed, there must be a period of no disruption. Examples of disruption include head trauma, changing your attention or refocusing on other things, arousal levels, perhaps taking drugs or drinking alcohol, or any of those things can affect the consolidation period. And basically, the more time the neurons have to connect and have to strengthen, the less chance there is of disruption. And they believe that this process takes approximately 30 minutes, but recent research has said that sometimes some memories, for some reason, could take several years to consolidate. So if you were, in a car accident, you had some sort of head trauma, you could lose the 30 minutes prior to the accident and have no memories, but you could also lose a couple of years before the accident. And there's so many factors that can affect that. Obviously, the severity of the head trauma, but also depending on the memories and how long they've taken to consolidate. So basically, your brain is vulnerable, and any damage, any disruption can definitely disrupt memories being permanently stored. That's the idea of consolidation theory. Okay, the second part that you need to know about in this chapter is kind of a different topic again, and that's about memory decline and what happens as we age. So we know that aging can affect memory in some ways, and there are a couple of factors. So generally, as people age, their central nervous system slows down, and that can have a general effect on their memory. So memories just might take a little bit longer to form, or they might take a little bit longer to recall, and that's just something that we need to deal with as we get older. However, not all forms of memory do decline as we age, and there's some that are more specific to the decline process. So semantic memories, which are your general information about the world, elderly people tend to be just as good at semantic memory tasks as younger people. They might take a little bit longer, but the memory's still there and they can retrieve it. So that's for general knowledge. So if you were to ask someone that's elderly who the Prime Minister was, they might forget it for a moment, but they will get to it. Episodic memories, however, these do tend to decline as we age. And in particular, the more recent episodic memories. So the older episodic memories, so if you're talking to someone who's 70, they'll actually probably remember a lot about their childhood, but they might not remember much about the last 20 years. And in particular, one other type of memory that's affected is their prospective memory, which is our ability to plan things in the future. So for instance, if I say, tomorrow I want to make sure that I grab these 3 things at the supermarket, that's me using my prospective memory. And as people get older, they're not very good at using that type of memory. Procedural memories, they're not really affected by aging. If you know how to ride a bike and you can remember how to ride a bike, you'll probably still remember how to ride a bike when you're 60 or 70. Same with tying your shoelaces, brushing your teeth, all those kind of procedural memories. So aging doesn't affect everything. The other thing that is affected by age is definitely your ability to work within your center of your memory, so your consciousness, your short-term memory or your working memory, depending on which model you're working from. If they're really simple tasks, it doesn't matter, age shouldn't affect it. However, if it's a more complex task, so working memory will actually decline if it's a complex task. So mental manipulation of information, taking some numbers and reading them backwards, that requires a lot of attention and it's quite a complex task. And that is quite hard for an elderly person. Their ability to recall tasks declines with age. So if you were to ask them to recall 20 things, 20 perhaps names of people that they went to high school with, that would be very hard for them to do. However, they're much better at recognition tasks. In fact, they will perform the same as someone your age on a recognition type task. So it depends on how you ask them to recall the memory as well. The other conflicting, bit of information is the fact that, elderly do perform worse on some tests, but maybe they're just not motivated to do well on memory tests anymore. I don't know about you, but when I'm 70, I probably won't care what I get on memory tests. When I'm 17, I probably cared a little bit more. So motivation might be a conflicting factor, as too with confidence, because you quite often hear elderly people going, oh, I'm old, I don't need to remember. And maybe that's showing that they're just lacking in confidence, and maybe that's been part of the reason why they don't do as well on a memory test. So unfortunately, a bit of this is speculative. The research has said that these things happen, but ultimately there's a lot of conflicting factors. Okay, the next little bit of area is just about amnesia. So you need to know about 2 different types of amnesias, and amnesias is the inability to remember. And there's retrograde amnesia and anterograde amnesia. So retrograde amnesia, the word retro means backwards in time, and this means that these people have difficulty in remembering previously stored information. So for instance, if you were to have a car accident and you couldn't recall what happened prior to the car accident, whether it was a day, a month, a year, that would be retrograde amnesia. So you can form new memories and have no problems moving forward, but there'll be a period of time that your memories will have gone. And that's obviously linked to the consolidation theory. So obviously the memory process has been disrupted because of that head trauma. If these people do recall their memories, they tend to come back in order of the oldest memories, followed by the most recent memories. So if you can't remember the last 2 years, but you slowly start to get your memories back, the ones that happened 2 years ago will come back first, followed by the ones that happened 23 months ago, 22 months ago, 21 months ago, and so on, until all of them eventually come back. However, you may not ever recall the immediate 30 minutes or so before the accident. That depends, and obviously that's got to do with the consolidation period. You may never get that back. Anterograde amnesia is the harder one to deal with. So this is when you lack the ability to make any new memories. So you can remember everything that happened prior to the trauma, but you cannot store anything new. In other words, information goes into sensory memory, short-term memory, and then drops out. It can't go into long-term memory. So obviously very detrimental to your well-being. It's commonly associated with Alzheimer's disease. I remember that in terms of A for anterograde. A is for after, so you have the inability to form memories after the event, and A for Alzheimer's as well. So lots of A's there for anterograde amnesia, Alzheimer's, and after. Okay, there's a couple of diseases that you need to know about as well, neurodegenerative diseases. So neuro meaning some sort of brain degeneration happening. And basically dementia is the overriding category. So this is a disorder which affects any higher mental functions. And one of the most commonly associated dementia disorders that we know about is Alzheimer's disease. And you need to know a little bit about Alzheimer's. So it involves gradual severe memory loss, confusion, depression, disordered thinking. And people with Alzheimer's can have both anterograde and retrograde amnesia. So they struggle to form new memories, but they also struggle to remember the old ones. There are 2 physical reasons why you would have Alzheimer's, and that's because of amyloid plaques, which are proteins that's found in between neurons and basically stop the communication of information, so stop the signaling that happens throughout the brain, and also neurofibrillary tangles, which happens inside the neuron and ultimately leads to cell death of the neuron. And of course, cell death would lead to no memories. The hippocampus is generally the first part of the brain that's affected, but eventually it will spread through the rest of the brain. And the more cell death you have, basically you get shrinkage of the brain and ultimately will lead to death of the patient. Korsakoff syndrome is another type of neurodegenerative disease. However, this one tends to be caused by alcoholism due to a vitamin deficiency, in particular vitamin B1, which is also known as thiamine. So they're the 2 that you need to know about, Alzheimer's and Korsakoff's. You probably won't get a question about Korsakoff's, but you may get a question about Alzheimer's. So it would definitely pay to know about amyloid plaques and neurofibrillary tangles. Okay, that's it for the next stack, but I figure let's play a little bit of trick on the people that don't do their homework. I'd love to know when I walk into your class who's done their homework, and I just want to do a simple thing. If you've done your homework, you will have heard me tell you about this. So walk into class, and instead of having all your books on the table, while I come in and set up, can you just put all your books on the floor? Do it discreetly so the people that don't do their homework won't sort of notice what you're doing, and I should be able to have a look around the room and see very quickly who's actually done their homework on time, and we can have a little bit of a giggle, but also it will make them realise that hopefully that it's really important that they watch these videos. So try to remember that, come into class, just do it really discreetly, pop your books on the floor, and once I have a bit of a look, then obviously I'll get you to get your books up. Okay, that's it. Good luck on your next SAC, but I will see you in class next week. Enjoy your long weekend. Bye.